Well, hello. It's good to be back in this forum. Last year, in a moment of madness and mischief, I was invited to speak to a smaller group at, I guess, the first gathering of this group. It was considerably smaller. We met in the back of my car, and then we went around to Chick-fil-A, and there was a kiss-a-thon that was really kind of fun. We took up sides, and that lasted about 25 minutes. But anyway, it's really good that you're here, and I commend you for the program that you are beginning or launching or re-entering or reinventing for yourself. One of the things that's exciting about this program is that it is non-traditional, but then so aren't you. You probably aren't very traditional either, because the people who are attracted to being full of insight, mischief, and potential in programs like this usually aren't people who come right off an assembly line. They're people who are restless, people who are curious, and have a large measure of personal mischief. Mischief is a very important word. It's one that at 71 keeps me going, I can tell you, because we all take ourselves, there's a difference. I take what I do seriously, but I don't take myself seriously. And that's a very important delineation. And so today, as I was thinking about what I might share, I first set some context, and then if I may, I'm going to take you into an area that probably will be a surprise to some of you, because I'm going to say in the best way I can, in the lessons of our CEOs around the world, how do you stay alive in the fast lane? How do you keep yourself going? Everything else in this program is probably going to jumpstart you in some way. There'll be a 220-volt line under your chair at certain points. The expectation is you're going to be able to sustain your attention, you're going to sustain your energy and your focus. You're going to find time to be in the program, and also, most important thing is to be with one another, because I think the real university sits around these tables. It is what you bring to one another. And I teach a course here every few years. I've done it now 3 years for graduate students in the College of Business, and I get medical students, and I get pharmacy students, and I get physicians, etc. And it's a course called Personal Leadership. And in this course, which is, somebody said to me, what is the course? I say it's Fransecky 1, Fransecky 2, Fransecky 3. It's 3 weekends. We take everybody away for 3 weekends, 1 a month for 3 months. And we really get into their passages, their lessons, the transitions. And we link them to, as I'll try to do this afternoon, not only what we know about enterprise leadership, but what we know about personal leadership. So my life is trying to forge the intersections of what I call the prose of leadership and the poetry of leadership. And I want to say that over and over again, because as I look at leadership, and I've been a leader or tried to be for a long time, and I've worked with remarkable leaders here and in Europe and South America, all kinds of places. They are my teachers. The biggest struggle they have is not leading their enterprise. They have all kinds of people that can measure and monitor growth, can look at what the biggest question every CEO has now is when's the 15% of growth coming, because that's what the board is asking them for. We're looking at a roiling, churning marketplace, particularly in Europe now. And so CEOs are really, and leaders of any kind, are in the business of trying to manage the organization's attention. Ralph Waldo Emerson, one of my favorite philosophers, said that as human beings, we are starved for horizons. We are starved for horizons. One of the things I loved, I moved here from New York City 9 years ago, and one of the things I love about Omaha, and I chose to stay here, was that we are horizon rich. Anywhere you look, there is a horizon. And if you've lived as I have in cities much of my life, we are absent horizons, except across the street. A deep striving impulse that people have in every social organization is that they can see a horizon. They can see a next. They can create a triptych, a framework, a GPS for what could happen next. That's a powerful thing. And the leaders in those organizations, and each of you, really are the people that must spark and encourage the conversation about next. So I'm going to try to throw out a lot of things today and give you the benefit. I've just tried to compress an awful lot of information. So we'll unpack it, and then if you have questions, we'll be happy to do it. I want to talk about enterprise leadership, what we know about that. I want to talk about some of the dimensions of personal leadership. I want to talk about, in a very deep way, and a deeper way, what the poetry of leadership and living is, as well as the prose. Around your table, in binders, and on your computers, and in your heart and your aspirations, trust me, the university is going to give you lots of prose. You're going to be prose rich. You're going to have case studies, and you're going to have reports, and you're going to have readings, and you're going to have assignments, and that's all appropriate because there's an intellectual architecture that needs to support your understanding of leading. And there is a very powerful set of experiences and case studies and insights. But I want to say this over and over again. The biggest, deepest, most provocative and evocative university are the people sitting around your table. If you don't find a way to learn more about one another, to collaborate, to test, to probe, to ponder, to create online and offline connections with the people in your groups and in your gatherings, you will have missed a terribly important part, not only of this program, but of any program. Because I really think at the deepest level, we are all works in progress. We all are hungry for what I call creative and courageous conversations. They're the conversations we avoid, but we need. It's the conversation that takes us into the iambic pentameter, into the poetry, into the rhythm, into what we've forgotten. It takes us back to what we remembered, we wanted to become, but often postponed. It takes us to the place where we are courageous enough to say, this is what I need from you, or here is what I'm uncertain about. So in this little dance of information, that's where I'm going. One of the most powerful things every leader must do, and it's even on a slide here, so I'm going to pound it down, and any of you who were here last year, you probably know your lips will move, is your job is to help your colleagues, your organization, your students, everyone in your life to frame and hold the context, because we can't do it. We are totally a distracted people. I mean, look at last month I was at Facebook. They're a client of ours in Palo Alto with the leaders of Facebook, 60 people in the room, talking about the biggest next move they're going to make. And it's now public. They're moving into mobile in a big way. So your phone, and my phone's in there, but I have a fancy new phone that's actually a computer. It's not a phone, it's a computer. And where we're all moving is commerce, and that drives everything. Commerce is driving all platforms to mobile. So your mobile banking, you're going to be mobile. You're going to live with that device. I love computers. I love all of these booming, buzzy things. My dear late wife used to say, Roger can never go into a Best Buy because they all stand up because they say he's back. And the clicking sound, you hear a credit card snapping on the counter. It's not a pretty sight. I love technology. Where's it going? We're moving to a single device. The devices are going to get smarter. The devices are going to get more compelling. And they're going to be ubiquitous, on us, with us, for us, like it or not. So I'm sitting in the room with these 30 top people, including Zuckerberg and Susan and all the rest. And what are they talking about? They're talking about their intentions of the number of Facebook users they want to have on mobile. And last night on an airplane, and one of your gentlemen right there was on the same airplane with me last night. We did not get thrown off, coming out of Atlanta, where Delta was once again giving us a sort of tribal experience of survival. The thing that's so powerful is that all of us are trying to bring to focus what we need in our life. And the statistic I read in the Wall Street Journal last night was the latest number of Facebook mobile users is 680 million. That's 680. It's only going to go up. So what's happening? We're living in a society where we can't hold context. We live in an age of continuous partial attention. We're living at a point where the devices will divide us if we aren't careful. If you have students or you have people in your life that are device users, and who isn't, you're going to have to fight them, sometimes to the draw, to get their attention. You're competing not only for eyeballs, but for why you matter, why there's a horizon. So, like it or not, We are living in an age of distraction. We're living in an age of continuous partial attention, a phrase from Linda Stone at Microsoft. And we're living in a time when it's hard to know what the foreground is, what the background is, where the horizon rests. So that context means it's a new day. It really is. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm 71. I've been working since I was 14. I love to work. I will never stop working. As Twain said, I'll burn out, I won't rust out. And I love it because everyone in my life is a teacher. Everyone in my life brings something to me. As I trust, that's what I mean, that's the importance of this table. So when I talk about leadership, I'm as much as anything talking about living. Leadership for me is a frame. Living is what we must do. And so one of the things that I offer to you as an idea, very important, is that to discover the poetry, you have to fall forward into your life. Not backward and not sideways. You must fall forward. And falling forward means surrender. Now, men in the room will now cross their legs and look blanched slightly because it sounds as if we're giving up. I mean surrender up your life so you can see it. Surrender up your life so you can invite someone in it. Surrender up your life so you can see what you don't need to do or become anymore. So you can have the energy to become usually what you postponed. Iris Sanguilio, a wonderful psychologist in New York, said 30 years ago about women. She said, as women, we tend to postpone ourselves. How poignant that is. Well, so do men. We just are socialized not to talk about that. So, I'm now going to leap into my presentation. Are you excited about this? Because it's just going to get more obscure. I mean, it really is. So, we begin. And I'm not wedded to this in any way because I leap about, and I'm really here because I want to visit with you. I love Stephen Sondheim. Any of you love the music of Stephen Sondheim? You may now stand, be rewarded, and be... No. Okay, one person. Okay, thank you for sharing. Two people. No, but Stephen Sondheim, I'm a New Yorker, and Stephen Sondheim, to me, his music represents the kind of brittle truths of relationships. And he said in the opening line of Sunday in the Park with George, which is a wonderful musical based on the life of George Seurat, the artist, white, a blank page or canvas. Bring order to the whole through design, composition, balance, light, and harmony. I won't sing it for you, but I'll spare you that later on after, but really, this is to me what life's about. Every day you show up and you got a white page. You have a new page every day. Every day you have a chance. Every day you have an invitation. Every day you've got the opportunity for your next. And what we do instead is we crunch our days. We overschedule them. I sat on this plane before I linked up in Atlanta with this gentleman at the table back there who was going to try to forget he ever met me in a little while, coming up from Florida where I hide sometimes. And I sat next to a woman who was obviously very ill. And she sat down and she said, which I'm sure is part of her therapy, let me tell you what's wrong with me. Thank you for sharing. But it was, she said, a month ago, I had a pain in my side. And I went to the emergency room and they said, you have stage 4 lung cancer. Hello? You have stage 4 lung cancer. And she said, I never smoked a day in my life. And she was in very bad shape. And the prognosis for people with stage 4 is not very good. And I thought to myself, each day we are given a gift of that day or that moment, because all we have are moments. Let me say that again. All we have are moments. Ask the people in the theater in Aurora. Ask the people in Kansas City. That's all we have are moments. And so the question becomes, what kind of moments are you creating for the people in your life? And more important, what are the moments you're creating for yourself? My bet is we give too many of them away. Let me surrender up my moments. How much time do you want? Sure, as long as you want, whatever you need. I'm yours. No. We have to be careful what we surrender up. Or we remember the prose, but we never experience the poetry. And in poetry, in the blank spaces, Japanese painting, Japanese paint in blank spaces. That's what they do. It's what haiku is. They take you into the blank spaces. So it invites you to imagine what sits between the tree and the flower. What sits between here and that horizon? Leaders of any kind, setting and hold the context, need to have a balance between making the certain certain and inviting a degree of uncertainty. So people can still say, I will get there, and what will I discover? Don't show me all the pictures. Let me imagine what I'll discover. One of the things I deeply worry about, and Isabel mentioned, I spent 15 years doing work in children's television with a program called Sesame Street and some other things for a long time. And I worked with some of the most remarkable people in television and produced some programs and did some crazy things. One of the most remarkable was a fellow named Bill Cosby. And Bill, Dr. William Crosby, Bill Crosby used to say over and over again, when scripts were being developed, don't finish it. Don't finish it. Let the viewer finish it. Let the viewer finish and imagine what will happen. Let the viewer step in, especially a child. Take them to the point where you then take them to the point, but let them go there. Do you see? But our tendency, usually out of fear in our life, is we fill every moment. We fill every moment. I got 60 minutes, they're mine. You haven't got a single minute. You're mine. Okay, now I'm breezing through life-changing information. You may have to change your clothes after this because it's really pretty exciting. Enterprise leadership. As a kid, I grew up outside of New York City in a little place near Syracuse for about 12 years, where I never saw the ground. We had 120 inches of snow, lake effect snow. And so I spent most of my life not fantasizing as most young men did, but shoveling. I did a lot of shoveling. It was a great metaphor for life. It was blank and it was white and it was cold. And that wasn't what I wanted my young, nubile, oversexed 15-year-old wanted to be. I wanted a horizon. But every month in our house, a yellow magazine arrived called the National Geographic. Do you know that? You know the National Geographic? And what was wonderful for me, and I realize this is 1822, what was wonderful for me is tucked in every one of these, little Wells Fargo wagon goes down the street, is that there was a map of a different place in the world. And I used to unfold those maps, and over the years, I filled the walls of my bedroom with maps. It led me into a very expensive hobby of collecting maps. And because for me, as Korzybski, the scientist said, we have to remember the map is not the territory. The map takes us to what the territory is, but it isn't the territory. And so for me, the map was an invitation to a next, to a place that really was provocative and exciting. And one of the things in my life I've been devoted to doing is a lot of travel and living in different places of the world, and our kids lived in different places in the world. I just really believe that travel is not something that's a luxury anymore. Travel is part of building your horizon. Travel is absolutely critical. And I'm going to tell a nasty little story. About 6 years ago, I've been here 9 years, maybe it was 7 years ago, I was asked by Gallup to give a talk to all the school superintendents in the state of Nebraska. I don't know why. It was clearly the last time that'll happen. And a wonderful group of people. And in the course of whatever it was I was saying, at the end, Q&A, somebody said, what can we do in our schools to make our work more important to our students? So I don't know, I said something, and I had this instinct. And I said, how many of you travel? Quiet. How many of you have passports? Quiet. By a show of hands, ladies and gentlemen, how many? And in that room of 60 some odd people, about 15 raised their hands. The superintendents of schools in the communities, large and small, didn't travel. If they did, they were doing it illegally. And so I said, well, I have an assignment for you if I come back next year. Get to the post office, get a passport, and go someplace between now and next year. Canada, Mexico don't count. Go someplace. Well, it was very exciting because I did come back in a year. And I met people in the hall taking their passports out and saying, hey, and I got arrested. No, but I mean, it was important. And how do you have a context larger than your setting unless you go someplace? And I mean really go someplace. What's wonderful now, it's not hard. I mean, you have to fight with the TSA every once in a while, but it's not that hard. It's not that expensive. So I deeply, deeply believe all of us need wider, larger, more provocative maps. We need maps to our next. We need maps that provoke us and say, what would it be like to go there? Watching the Discovery Channel, as wonderful as it is, or Rick Steves, or all these great, and his good friend, all these people, give you a sense of what it looks like, but not a sense of what it is. Don't cheat yourself by living with retinal afterimage. Go in and have the experience. Sniff the place, scratch it, taste it, be there, get lost, get sick, get fun, have a good time. But really, really have an experience. We are experience starved. We postpone our experiences to media, to television, to to social media. Have your own experience. Go see that place, whatever that space is. So in this new economy, and it is a new economy, and I've just come from 2 weeks in Europe where the financial situation there is actually very profoundly serious. And there's real concerns about whether Spain and Greece and Italy and will finally piss off the Germans, and the Germans won't give them any more money. And there really is an issue about the future of the euro, particularly in two countries. This is not subtle stuff. It's going to roll back on us very, very hard. And so when you look at this new economy, and we sit down with CEOs in Munich and Milan and London, this is what they're talking about. They're talking about globalization. Globalization meaning we are going to live increasingly in a world that has no boundaries. It has no boundaries. Your neighbor, obviously technology does that, but your neighbor could be anywhere in the world. Your students will be anywhere in the world. And in your mind and in your experience, that sense of living large is where we're all living. In the economic world, everything that happens impinges, touches something else. It's all interconnected. To the second one, we're living with technology now. I mentioned the digital technology, our devices, our whatever. We probably too much are connected. We are wired. We are unwired. Don't you get upset now when you go into a place that doesn't have wireless? Where's the wireless? I ate your bad food and I want the wireless. Where are you? And 2 years ago, where did you find wireless? Maybe Starbucks? Now we go into airports and every gathering of three, go into someone's house. Hi, what's your router ID? You know, it's like that's what's happening. The next technologies, the next 4 or 5 years, won't be wireless. They'll be everywhere. It'll be ubiquitous. Google, another interesting group that we spend time with, Google is projecting that they are already going to build what we would call wireless cities. They're already looking at cities like Philadelphia, et cetera, where you will drive by satellite and other things a signal, so wherever you go, you'll be connected. Wherever you go, that's next. That's a next. The third part for enterprise leaders is how do we establish value anymore? How do we price? How do we grow? How do we maintain margin? If you live in a very large enterprise, and one of our newest clients is one of the big three retailers, and they are really struggling because what you do is you go shop them, and then you go online and buy. You don't buy it in the store. So all that margin, all that profit goes away because you can buy it for less, and until our tax authorities strike back, in many cases you can get it without sales tax. And that is very, very onerous for large box retailers. So what large box retailers are doing, and others are saying, how do we move from seeing, in case of one, Target, Target, as my kids say, how do we move from looking at people as customers to now everyone that works at Target is asked to call everyone who shops there a guest. You are a guest. That's their training. We want you to come into our experience as a guest. That's actually a very interesting idea. To be a guest. It's a very powerful word to be a guest. That means the host has to do something really important. So the last is, the war for talent, the name war for talent came out of a provocative study McKinsey did 10 years ago. And it's that whole notion of where does the new talent come from? 10 years ago, when that study was finished, and some of us were involved in that study, it really was the concern about where's the new demographic talent coming from? Where are the boomers, the post-boomers? Where are they coming from overseas? Well, now it is literally a war to get talent, to get and keep talent. And now in an under-sourced economy, you have a situation now where you have tremendous unemployment. The war for talent becomes even more provocative and poignant, of talented people who can't find work. I really worry, and this is a lovely thought on a Monday afternoon, I worry about the millions and millions and millions of Americans, our citizens, who will never work again, who will never work, who will never find work, who will lose the desire to find work. What do they do? Where do they go? You can only drink so much coffee. You can only hang around so much. What do they do? Our enterprises, our schools, our governments, our corporations are really at the edge of having to look at that and say, what do we do? A bold, provocative idea. Why don't we teach them something? Why don't we provide communities for people to teach one another? Because what's captive in this audience, they aren't lining up in Oakland in the Occupy movement. What is captive here is a university of experience, just like the people around your table. But we don't have a way to invite them into something that matters. And I think we're going to pay a huge price in this country if this reality becomes more pervasive. And all the demographics suggest that it will. I am very worried about that. And I think it's something we all ought to be worried about. I'm going to breeze through this. Well, it's compelling and life-changing, and you will never see it again. I'm going to talk about our challenges. You know what they are. This I love. This is a study done of all of us as Americans. And they said, you know what? What are we made of? As Americans, we're adolescents. We're impetuous. We're unpredictable. We're inventive. We're full of enterprise and hope. And our future, our culture, is about a search and the glorification of our individual identity. In other words, it's about us. So, we've got a lot of socialized narcissists. We're all happy because it's about me, and I want it to be about me. And so this particular author talks about, what are the Magnificent Seven? What do we insist on? Well, one thing in America is we insist on choice. You remember when you went into a grocery aisle and there were 5 kinds of jelly? Average now, there might be over 100 and 125. Go into, well, I don't have to tell you, shopping has become a social experience, not an economic experience. People go to malls to have fun. And now we've created in malls environments, which incidentally have stores, but we're now building theme parks, and we're doing all kinds of things to create an environment to keep people there, not just on hot days, but to keep people there. So this characteristic of us as a people is we pursue impossible dreams. There's a Don Quixote in all of us. We are obsessed with big and more. We're impatient about time. Our acceptance of our mistakes. We're very forgiving of ourselves. We have this urge to improvise, and we are fascinated by what's new, all of us. So time has become the most expensive commodity we have. Time sets the boundaries on whether you will live a life rich in prose or one that invites poetry. Time will be your enemy there. Because if you live a life of staggering purpose, and where each day your Outlook lists pop out fast, and your to-dos, and your taskmaster, and you're relatively anal retentive and compulsive, and you track everything in your life, and a lot of us have done that and do it, you will encourage the prose, however fleeting it is, and you will diminish the poetry. And in diminishing the poetry, it will have an impact not only on your relationships, but on what you will become, what you will see as possibilities. This is in our practice, we're called in when something is broken. We're not called in when things are working. We're called in when somebody's in trouble, when they're stuck, when they're lost. Now, they might have 100,000 employees that impacts. So how do you get people back on track? How do you bring them back into why they're there or what they think they're supposed to do? And there's a clinical answer to that, but it's a personal answer too that says, I really think the question of life is not what you're doing. The question of life is, what are you becoming? What are you becoming by default or by design? And it means taking charge of your life in a way that allows you to surrender into your life. Doesn't mean you give up control. And incidentally, control is a total illusion. I guess you're all adults and know that. None of us are in control of anything. And the reason that we have to be in control is we're terrified. Because the greatest motivator of all is fear. You probably know that. But fear defines and edits us. Control gives us the false sense that we have actually got a beginning, middle, and end. And at the end of the day, if I've had a really crappy day, I'll show you my to-do list with everything crossed off. Now, I never had a moment to myself. I never had a thought to myself. I was depressed 40% of the day, but I want to show you I got those 10 things done. Who cares? Who gives a? Who cares? So this is, I hope you don't hear me suggest it's not important to accomplish. And I'm a high achiever. I love to get things done. But in the course of doing that, you may look back and you aren't there anymore. You have lost your why. You have lost why you showed up. You have lost your dream. If you ever allowed the dream, and the dream is informed by the poetry. And so all of this, when life becomes a passing blur, when we have too much information, and we do, we can't hold the context. A funny slide coming up, just to say, so it's unbearable. Everybody look, smile, thank you, you'll all feel much better. That's actually my next door neighbor, that's another story. We're going to go quickly through here. Principles of change, this is powerful, provocative, it's in a book. Another time, we're not going to do this, I don't care about this. This is important. 3 words. That as a leader, you're all leaders, I think you have to live with 3 compass points. One is you have to be clear. You've got to be clear about why, clear about when, clear about what you need in your life and what you need from others. You have to assume, and if it isn't there, you have to develop the competence to grow in your life, to lead in your life, to be in your life. Competence, the pros, is what allows you to lead. There are hard skills. There's a hard school of leadership, and I'm sure in this class, and in classes I teach and involved in, I teach in a couple other places when I have time, between airports, there's some great material. I mean, there's good stuff. A lot of it's crap, but there's some good stuff. And so that's the pros, and that's what you need. But where that all comes and finds focus is, what do you care about? What are you committed to doing and becoming about your life? Because everything that you experience comes out of that question. Everything you give to someone else, every moment you're available to someone else, every moment that touches, inspires someone else comes out of that part of you. And you need to protect it, and you need to nurture it, and that is what I call the poetry. That is what I call the dream. And sadly, and I mean really sadly, many times when I spend time with the people we work with and the people that work with them, they're faking the dream. They came in, they had a dream, but it got socialized, it got terrorized, it got postponed, and they're trying to get it back, and it's really hard to get it back. It's what happens to a marriage that goes sour. It's what happens to lovers who forget why. It's why you must always keep an eye on what ignites you, what touches you, what surprises you, what provokes you, what makes you laugh. Laughter is one of the heating elements of poetry, to laugh. You aren't getting away without hearing some poetry, by the way. So this is our model. It's quite compelling. I'm not going to, but this is, I'm going back. No, I won't be able to go back. Maybe I will. Here, this is important. Little book I want to recommend to you, if you don't know it. Are you all ready to write this down? Because it's a very long title. The title is Transitions. And it's by a psychologist from Mill Valley named William Bridges. It's a little book written in 1980, and it sold almost 1 million copies. And Bridges is a student and an expert in adult change. And it's a book that I give hundreds of copies away every year. I use it in classes, I do it in seminars, and it's simply called Transitions. And the subtitle is Making Sense of Life's Changes. Bridges' premise is very provocative. He says change begins with endings, not beginnings. Unless we end something, what happens is we circle back and do it again. And so unless you go through a process of ending, you marry the same person again, you find the same bad business partner again, you buy the same house again, because you haven't ended something. So there's 3 steps. They're very simple. And I have all of our students, I have all of my clients go through this. The first is you have to end something, and that means knowing what to end, what to stop, what not to do anymore. And then you enter into a period that is quite uncomfortable, and why most real change fails, he calls it the neutral zone, to a process of then reinvention. So this is how I explain it to students. I say, I want you to imagine you go down to a little fog-draped river, and at the bottom of the hill is the dock with your rowboat. And you're going to get in that rowboat, and by getting in that rowboat and turning it around and heading it out to across the lake, you're leaving this shore and you're entering a no man's zone, a neutral zone. You're leaving behind what you did before, and maybe what you were before, and how you did it. And you're rowing across that fog-draped neutral zone, that period of uncertainty, where there isn't a clear answer. There's no billboard saying, here's the answer. There's no secret handshake that tells you that. You're going to go across that fog-draped sea in the hope that at the other end of your rowboat is another dock that has a light that says, welcome. This is the new place. This is where you have to come. But you can't see it. You can't see it. And most of us do what? Turn around. We get halfway across and say, well, that felt better. God, I feel better. Built up my shoulders doing that. That was good. Doesn't get you there. Bridges' premise, and it's extraordinarily powerful, is that change begins with those endings and that process. Let me take it one step further. We do a program called Life Story Interview. If you go, and I'm going to do a 30-second commercial. Our website is called Apogee, APOGEE-CEO.com, Apogee CEO, one word.com. And it's rich with material. It's got a lot of stuff. It's free, it's all yours. Every month I do a newsletter, a blog on some aspect of all of this. Goes now to about 11,000 people, 6 countries. It's been remarkable. And it's part of my therapy. It's part of what I do. And on that website is a wonderful video that one of my partners, who's a leading expert in life story interview, has done called Courageous Conversations. It's an hour and it's really worth watching. But what do I mean by life story interview? The technique was developed by a sociologist, and when we sit down with a client and we're working with them, we use standard assessment tools and we do profiling in 360. We then sit down with them and we say, okay, I want you to tell me your life story. And I'm going to tape it, and I want you to start as early as you can, what you remember, and just proceed chronologically through the years. And I'll just listen. I may ask a question every now and then. And people say, well, it won't take long. 20 minutes, I'll tell you my life story. It's incredible. It's very moving. And I must have done over 100 of these, maybe more. I've never had anybody who about an hour in, they're now about 19, starts to say, oh my God, that was when my aunt said I should be a doctor. That's when I forgot, that's when I had that experience that gave me the idea that this is something I'd be good at. That was the summer my father died, and I didn't do anything for 3 years. I faked it. Deeper and deeper and deeper. Ladies and gentlemen, you are your story. Your story is you. And your story wasn't written entirely by you. It was written by a lot of other people. When you hear your life story, and we've done a lot of work in this, and on the video you'll see it's a very rich program. We've studied decade by decade high-achieving men and women to see what the patterns are, and they're very profound. And The very notion that you can change your story, you can restore or restory your life is very provocative. But you can only do it when you hear your story. When you hear who wrote your story with you, what voices you heard that gave you permission to become or not become what you are. Life story interview is becoming a very critical part of our methodology, but it's much more than that. We tape these. It takes about 3 hours. Somebody sits and so at the end of the evening they leave, and overnight we transcribe it. And they come in that morning for the debrief, and we hand them a book. It's their life. It's the story they've just told us. I cannot tell you how moving that is for people, to hold their life like that, to go back and listen to their life like that, to say, who touched me, who taught me, who terrified me, who never acknowledged me, who never believed in me, and who did. Wow. So in this process of ending, in the process of transitions, in the process of next, don't lose this idea of listening to your story and changing it, because here's the good, you can change it. You can restore it. You can't erase it, but you can write across the fog-draped sea a new story. And that is an act of courage, and it also takes you to a place of moving from the prose of what you thought happened to the poetry of what could happen. See? Really important stuff. So we've got a lot of stuff floating around here. So many things I want to tie together, and not much time. Context. Context. When you get up in the morning, do you have a ritual beyond that ritual? Do you have a ritual, although it might be related to this one, do you have a ritual where you pause and think about what that day is and what it could be to you? Do you pause and say, for just a couple of minutes, to yourself and to no one else, this day is my gift. What do I do with it? What might I do today? What might I become today? What shouldn't I postpone anymore? Who should I reach out to? Who should I say something to? Who should I whisper to? Who should I hold? Who should I caress? Who should I love? When you do that, everything changes. Because for one thing, you're beginning to step into a conscious day, not an unconscious day. You are stepping into a day that is designed by you and invited by you. And here's the magic. Somehow, I don't know how this happens, someone's listening. Because people show up in ways that are startling and surprising. It's a very personal thing for me. My dearest, wonderful wife died 4 years ago, actually tomorrow. Suddenly, no warning. That's falling forward. And in that, I have become many things, but I've become so aware of the powerful lessons of the moment that you should never take any moment ever, ever for granted, because it's a gift. And so I deeply believe that in your life, you are invited to be better than you are. In your life, you're invited as a leader to create more prose for clarity and more poetry for delight. In your life, you're invited to build a life that matters, not a life that's busy. I have to share two things with you. Mary Oliver is one of my favorite poets. Mary Oliver is one of our greatest American poets. And she wrote this poem called The Journey, which I think is exactly what we're talking about. One day you finally knew what you had to do, and you began. I love that first line. One day, you finally knew what you had to do, and you began. Though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles, mend my life, each voice cried back at you. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do. Though the wind pried through its stiff fingers to its very foundation, though their melancholy was terrible, but it was already late enough. It was a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stone. But little by little, you left the voices behind. The stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice which you slowly began to recognize as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save. One day, you finally knew what you had to do. And you went out into the wild night, and you stopped listening to everyone saying, "Heal me." And you went out into that world to find out what you had postponed. You went into that world to discover in the wild bramble of that night, in the danger of that night, what you could become. Determined to save the only life you really could save. Mary Oliver, The Journey. And one more. I could do 20, but I'll only do one. This is Michael Josephson. What will matter? What will matter? How will the value of your days be measured? What will matter is not what you bought, but what you built. Not what you got, but what you gave. What will matter is not your success, but your significance. What will matter is not what you learned, but what you taught. What will matter is every act of integrity, compassion, courage, or sacrifice that enriched, empowered, encouraged others to emulate your example. What will matter is not your competence, but your character. What will matter is not how many people you knew, but how many people will feel a lasting loss when you are gone. What will matter is not your memories, but the memories that live in those who loved you. What will matter is not how long you will be remembered, by whom and for what. Living a life that matters doesn't happen by accident. It is not a matter of circumstance, but of choice. Choose to live a life that matters. So much more. Context, distraction, change, uncertainty, horizons, maps, prose, poetry. In the Cuisinart that is my strange life, it's all leadership. It's about leading and living a life that matters for you and, by extension, the people around you. It is leading a life with purpose and possibility towards a horizon of your own making. It is leading a life where you take the moment to pause in your day, every damn day, and you choose what kind of day that's going to be. It isn't by default, it is by design. It isn't by prose, it's by poetry. It's by asking for the kind of day you want. It's asking for the way you want to celebrate and be remembered. It's asking for how you can be better, how you can touch, how you can teach, how you can step up and be more effective in your life for you and, by extension, to everyone else. One day you'll finally know what you have to do, and you will begin. Thank you. Great to be with you.